Terima kasih atas kehadiran Anda. Nama saya Emma Berg dari bagian Diplomasi Publik Kedutaan Besar Australia. Sebelum kita memulai acara ini, saya ingin memberikan informasi bahwa fasilitas interpretasi simultan dalam bahasa Indonesia tersedia sepanjang Masterclass hari ini. Acara ini acara ini merupakan bagian dari rangkaian program Festival Australia Indonesia 2021 yang diselenggarakan dari 18 sampai 27 Juni. Kami ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Institut Seni Indonesia Yogyakarta, Deakin University, dan FanforceTV sebagai partner kami dalam program FSAI 2021. Khususnya dalam penyelenggaraan FSAI 2021 Film Masterclass pada hari ini. FSAI adalah platform untuk membangun koneksi dan kolaborasi untuk antara industri film Australia dan Indonesia. Baiklah, pertama-tama saya ingin mengucapkan selamat datang kepada para pembicara dalam Film Masterclass hari ini, yaitu Dr Sian Mitchell dari Deakin University, dan Danny Lachevre dari FanforceTV, Bapak Dr Iwandi, Dekan Fakultas Seni Media Rekam, Institut Seni Indonesia Yogyakarta, dan Marissa Anita sebagai sahabat FSAI 2021 yang akan menjadi moderator pada acara ini, serta Luke Brown, Counselor untuk Media, Public Diplomacy, Alumni, dan Scholarship Kedutaan Besar di Jakarta. Nah, sebelum kita memulai acara ini, mari kita saksikan sama-sama video sangat singkat FSAI 2021.
Anything you want to say to the animals of Sanctuary City?
Yeah, I'm going back to bed.
Sangat bagus ya. Seperti yang Anda saksikan, FSAI merupakan sebuah kesempatan besar bagi masyarakat Indonesia untuk menyaksikan film-film terbaik Australia dan Indonesia juga. Ini adalah tahun ke-6 dari FSAI 2021, di mana untuk pertama kalinya dalam sejarah penyelenggaraan festival ini diadakan secara virtual untuk memberikan kesempatan kepada para penonton film Indonesia di seluruh Nusantara untuk dapat mengakses film-film terbaik Australia dan Indonesia secara gratis. Oke, FSAI 2021 menghadirkan 6 film Australia dan 2 film Indonesia dengan beragam genre film mulai dari animasi, komedi, hingga horror, dan lain-lain. Semua film FSAI 2021 tersebut dapat langsung diakses dan ditonton oleh teman-teman yang hadir hari ini secara gratis melalui situs web FSAI, yaitu www.fsai2021.com. Silakan daftar online dan pilih film yang ingin ditonton. Oke, untuk memulai acara ini langsung saja saya persilakan Luke Brown, Counselor Media, Public Diplomacy, Alumni, and Scholarships untuk menyampaikan kata sambutan. Terima kasih, Luke.
Selamat pagi dan selamat siang untuk orang-orang dari Australia. Nama saya Luke dari Kedutaan Besar Australia dan saya sangat sekali untuk ke sini hari ini. Terima kasih banyak semua telah bergabung dengan kami hari ini. Hari ini kita akan mendengar dari pakar industri film Australia. Pertama dari Dr Sian Mitchell, dosen film dan desain di Universitas Deakin dan Director Festival dari Melbourne Women in Film Festival. Dan juga ada Danny Lachevre yang telah membantu memanggungkan dan meluncurkan proyek ke Marvel Studios, Netflix, and Universal Pictures, termasuk Black Widow dari Kate Shortland. Mereka akan berbagi dengan kita seputar pengetahuan terkini di industri promosi film dan akan memberikan panduan tentang dunia film festival sehingga dapat membantu Anda untuk hal-hal yang perlu Anda perhatian di proyek film Anda berikutnya. Terima kasih Danny dan Sian untuk bergabung dengan kami hari ini. Terima kasih kepada Fanforce dan Universitas Deakin atas dukungannya untuk FSAI 2021. Sahabat FSAI kami di tahun ini adalah Marissa Anita, juga akan bergabung dengan kami hari ini sebagai moderator selama Masterclass ini berlangsung. Marissa bukan hanya sekedar sahabat FSAI, dia adalah sahabat dari Kedutaan Besar Australia di Jakarta dan salah satu alumni Australia yang sangat kami banggakan. Marissa belajar tentang jurnalisme di University Sydney. Marissa telah memberikan kontribusi besar untuk jurnalisme dan film di Indonesia dan internasional. Dan saya yakin kita juga akan belajar banyak darinya saat Marissa memandu kita dalam sesi film Masterclass hari ini. Selain itu, Marissa juga akan berbagi pengalamannya sendiri ketika bekerja di berbagai judul film sepanjang karir perjalanannya. Saya juga ingin mengucapkan selamat datang dan bergabung kepada semua mahasiswa dan para calon kreator film yang telah hadir bersama kita hari ini, khususnya mahasiswa dan fakultas dari Institut Senin Indonesia, Yogyakarta. Melalui FSAI dan kelas film Masterclass ini, kami berharap dapat membantu membangun hubungan yang lebih kuat antara komunitas film Australia dan Indonesia dan mendukung calon pembuat film untuk mengembangkan karya mereka. Saya harap Anda menikmati sesi ini dan dapat mengambil beberapa kiat baru untuk mengajukan dan mempromosikan proyek kreatif Anda berikutnya. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih sekali Pak Luke. Selanjutnya, saya juga ingin mengundang Bapak Dr. Irwandi, Dekan Fakultas Seni Media Rekam, Institut Seni Indonesia di Yogyakarta, untuk memberikan kata sambutan. Terima kasih Bapak Dr. Irwandi atas kata sambutannya.
Ya, terima kasih Emma. Selamat pagi Indonesia dan selamat siang Australia. Saya Irwandi, Dekan Fakultas Seni Media Rekam, ISI Yogyakarta. Senang sekali bisa ikut join di Masterclass FSAI 2021 ini. Ya, yang saya hormati Dr Sian Mitchell dari Deakin University. Selamat pagi Dr Sian. Dan Danny Lachevre dari FanforceTV. Selamat pagi. Serta Bapak Luke Brown dari Kedutaan Australia, bagian media, publik, diplomasi, dan beasiswa. Serta Ketua Program Studi Film dan Televisi ISI Yogyakarta, Bapak Latif, dan para mahasiswa yang saya banggakan. Ya, senang sekali kami pagi ini bisa bergabung di sini, bisa join di sini, karena acara ini sungguh-sungguh penting bagi kita, terutama juga bagi mahasiswa ISI Fakultas Seni Media Rekam, yang memiliki program studi film dan televisi, juga memiliki program studi animasi serta fotografi. Karena apa? Karena di kami pun di Indonesia saat ini pemerintah sedang mendorong agar mahasiswa atau produk perguruan tinggi bisa menghasilkan karya-karya yang nyata, yang terapan, termasuk diantaranya film. Sehingga Masterclass ini merupakan satu kesempatan yang luar biasa dan sepertinya sudah kami ikuti beberapa kali. Saya ingat di tahun 2019 itu acara ini juga dilaksanakan di kampus. Untuk itu saya merasa senang tahun 2021 ini masih berlangsung kembali. Dan mudah-mudahan kegiatan ini bisa kita kembangkan melalui jalinan kerjasama yang lebih intens melalui MOU atau MOA kepada embassy, juga kepada university-university yang ada di Australia. Kami cukup sering ke Australia dan merasa nyaman berkomunikasi dengan kampus-kampus maupun lembaga-lembaga yang ada di Australia. Tahun 2019 saya 2 minggu di Australia mengikuti workshop di daerah desa Pak di sana, di Trentham East. Daerahnya sungguh cantik dan manis sehingga saya pun kangen mau ke Australia lagi. Saya kira itu saya ucapkan selamat kepada seluruh yang hadir di sini, juga penyelenggara FSAI 2021 ini. Mudah-mudahan ini bukan yang terakhir, tetapi di tahun-tahun berikutnya atau di kesempatan mendatang kita bisa lebih bekerja sama. Fakultas Seni Media Rekam ISI Yogyakarta siap bekerja sama dan mendukung program-program untuk meningkatkan kemampuan dan kreativitas mahasiswa. Saya kira itu. Selamat mengikuti Masterclass dan salam dari Indonesia. Saya ucapkan terima kasih dan selamat pagi.
Terima kasih Bapak Dr. Irwandi atas kata sambutannya. Makasih Pak. Sesi tanya jawab akan tersedia setelah presentasi dari masing-masing pembicara, atau jika rekan-rekan mau bertanya via chat Zoom juga dipersilakan, bisa dalam bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggris. Teman-teman, sesaat lagi kita akan bersama-sama mengikuti Masterclass bersama dua pembicara kita. Saya ingin mengundang moderator untuk diskusi pada hari ini. Dia adalah sahabat FSAI 2021, seorang aktris yang telah mendapatkan pujian, nominasi, dan penghargaan di berbagai film festival, baik lokal maupun internasional, sekaligus berkontribusi terhadap dunia jurnalisme. Dia juga adalah kebanggaan Indonesia dan alumni Australia, Marissa Anita. Halo Marissa, apa kabar?
Halo, selamat pagi Emma. I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much atas introduction atau perkenalannya. Langsung aja kita mulai ya. Halo juga kepada teman-teman yang sudah bergabung dalam Masterclass ini. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang ke Masterclass hari ini tentang promosi film. Kita akan ada dua ahli yang akan berbagi ilmunya tentang bagaimana mempresentasikan konsep film, kemudian mempromosikan dan memasarkan film. Selain itu kita juga akan belajar seluk-beluk film festival. Film seperti apa yang kira-kira punya kans besar untuk masuk dalam festival film internasional. Bersama dengan dua pembicara kita pagi ini, ada Dr. Sian Mitchell dari Deakin University dan juga Danny Lachevre dari FanforceTV. Dr. Sian Mitchell ini saya kasih CV-nya sedikit ya. Dia adalah dosen di bidang film dan desain di Deakin University dan juga Direktur Festival Melbourne Women in Film Festival. Karya Dr. Sian Mitchell ini telah muncul di Kamera Obscura, Journal of Cinema dan juga Media Studies dan juga People Journal. Dia juga telah berkontribusi pada National Film and Sound Archive dan di blog penelitian sejarah Australian Film Institute. Dr. Sian Mitchell duduk di Komite Penasihat Internasional untuk Festival Film Wanita Internasional Seoul dan juga Dewan Alliance Française de Melbourne. Sementara itu, pembicara kedua kita adalah Danny Lachevre. Dia adalah pendiri Fanforce Group. Ini Fanforce Group ya, jadi banyak banget itu sub-subnya di bawahnya, di antaranya Fanforce, distribusi teater, kemudian FanforceTV untuk streaming dan acara virtual, The Picture House untuk pemasaran dan pitching film, dan juga Fanforce Productions yang merupakan produksi rumah produksi film. Fanforce telah merilis ratusan judul film di 40 negara, dan Danny juga telah membantu mengembangkan dan meluncurkan proyek ke Marvel Studios, Netflix, Universal Pictures, termasuk Black Widow arahan Kate Shortland, kemudian 2067 arahan Seth Larney, dan juga Sherpa arahan dari Jen Pidem. Nah, selama mendengarkan para ahli nanti, kalau teman-teman udah ada pertanyaan, catat dulu, nanti akan dijawab pada saat sesi tanya jawab setelah diskusi ini. Langsung saja kita sapa speakers kita pagi ini. Hello, good morning or good afternoon, Danny and Sian. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome in this virtual world that we live in at the moment. And thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your knowledge this morning. We really appreciate your time with us. So before we get into the discussion, I would like to invite Sian to please start by sharing your experience on what film festivals look for when accepting and programming films, and also what sort of strategies can emerging filmmakers apply when submitting their next film into a festival. The stage is yours, Sian.
Sure, no worries. Thank you so much. So hi, everybody. And thank you so much to the organisers for inviting me to do this, and also for the very warm welcome. Before I begin, I want to do something that's quite important for us to do here in Australia, which is to acknowledge that I'm coming to this masterclass on the traditional lands of the people of the Eastern Kulin Nation, the Bunurong Boomerang people. And I just want to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also their enduring connection to country, to culture, to knowledge, and to storytelling. So just want to begin by doing that. I did prepare a little presentation to help sort of structure the sorts of things I want to talk about, and hopefully some really practical advice for you all to get your films into film festivals. So I'll just share my screen and get that ready. Okay, see my notes there too. All right, so hopefully you can all see that. Okay, so yes, my background, my experience is in both lecturing in film and lecturing in film festivals, actually, and my research is in that area too, as well as being a director of the Melbourne Women in Film Festival, which my team and I started in 2017. So we've been doing it now for about 5 or 6 years. So I thought that in the time that I have with you today, trying to sort of break down perhaps some really, like I said, really practical advice into sort of 2 big questions, I think, and then perhaps a little bit of some resources and bits and pieces I can offer on where to find film festivals. But the 2 sort of big questions here are, you know, what do film festivals look for? And speaking to the experience of working with a film festival and what we look for, as well as thinking about a festival strategy. So particularly as film students, this is a really, really important thing to sort of start thinking about now as you're making your films and looking for where you can get them screened and find audiences. It's just really, really important. So I'm going to start sort of looking at those sorts of questions. And this is probably a little bit of an overwhelming slide, but I wanted to add some visuals and just to kind of really, I suppose, reiterate the point I'm making here is that there are so many film festivals around the world, and there are so many different kinds of film festivals around the world. So it's not just these sort of big international film festivals we probably see a lot in the media, you know, Cannes and Berlin, and although I will talk about a little bit about Berlin in a moment, but Cannes or Berlin or Venice and those sorts of big, really huge sort of ones where a lot of the stars and famous filmmakers tend to head. There are many, many others, and I just want to acknowledge some of the different kinds of film festivals that exist that you can find. So, as I said, we do have our big international ones. Almost every probably major city, at least I know in Australia, has an international film festival as well. They aren't as big as something like as a Cannes, of course, but they're kind of those major sort of cities festivals that are around every year. There are also what we would call genre film festivals. So that might be documentary film festivals or horror fantasy film festivals, or animation film festivals as well. So anything that focuses around a particular kind of genre or form of filmmaking. We also have what I would call identity-focused film festivals. So this is something that I work in the Melbourne Women in Film Festival. So women's film festivals, there's a big international network of those. There's also ones that will center around sort of marginalized racial groups. So it might be, African-American film festivals or Indigenous film festivals. So there's a really big one in Canada called Imaginative, that's right. And that's all around sort of screening Indigenous works from around the world. So it might be, Maori filmmakers or Indigenous Canadian filmmakers, for example. And then we also have national cinema film festivals. And I've popped a little logo down here for the Indonesian Film Festival that is in Melbourne. And so we have an Indonesian film festival here in Melbourne. And so we have a lot of those sorts of national focus film festivals. So Japanese Film Festival, Korean Film Festival, German, Italian, French. So film festivals that focus on bringing other countries' cinemas, the latest of other countries' cinemas to Melbourne or to another city around the world, to really highlight the culture and the stories that are coming out of those countries. And then the last one I've got there is more like a sort of regional or community film festival. So it might be, the one that I've got there is relatively big for us. It's called Vision Splendid. It's up in a country town in Queensland called Winton. But it services the community, and it brings cinema to smaller areas, I suppose, that people can't go and travel into big cities to go to the bigger film festivals. And so that's those sorts of really audience-driven kinds of film festivals that make up the landscape. So it is just more than those international ones. There's a lot more sort of going on around the world. As filmmakers, what I would probably suggest here is thinking about what other kinds of film festivals your film could potentially go into, and to start doing some research into those festivals. And the first sort of step, I would say, is to think about or have a look at what the festival vision and mission is. And so I've just prepared a little grab here. So this is from the Indonesian Film Festival in Melbourne. This is from their website. So this gives a little bit of background context to what the aims of a festival are. And that kind of helps decipher or to think about what the festival is interested in programming, what they're looking for with the sorts of films that they'll want to put in their program each year. And so this one, of course, is all about promoting Indonesian culture and filmmaking and stories to Australian audiences, but also servicing the Indonesian diasporic community. So Indonesian Australians who may have immigrated over to Melbourne, for example, who want to see Indonesian films as well and have a piece of home, perhaps, as part of their life in Australia. So there's a few different, sort of ways of thinking about the different sorts of audiences that a lot of these festivals will try to attract. And the mission statements generally are the things that will give you a hint at that, as well as a few other pieces of really important information I'm going to go through in a second as well. Well, I have a sip of water. Okay. So we're getting into some nitty-gritty now for this. The main information that you will be looking at as filmmakers to see which festivals to go into are the guidelines, the eligibility criteria that is available either on a festival website, or it might be a particular platform that the film festival uses to collect submissions. So one of the biggest ones is Film Freeway for this, and I know a lot of film festivals use Film Freeway. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Film Freeway later on in this presentation too. But these are the places to go and read those guidelines. And I cannot stress enough, and I am going to repeat myself throughout this, filmmakers must read the eligibility guidelines for a film festival. I will tell you a story about this in a moment, but it's so, so, so important, and just to avoid disappointment, basically. So here we have, I've picked the Berlinale as an example here. So this is what a really big major film festival looks for. And this is the screenshot from their shorts guidelines in particular. They do have other guidelines for all the different sorts of sections they have in their program, because they've got quite a few. So they've got, the feature competition, shorts competition. They've got one called Panorama, which looks at kind of sort of niche identity kind of politics or political filmmaking. So there's all different kinds of programs here, but this is from the shorts. And the really important pieces of information that you'll find in these guidelines, besides, what kinds of films are accepted, are whether the films need to be a world premiere or a local premiere. So, something like the Berlinale prefers a world premiere. So if you've screened somewhere else first, then your chances of getting into the Berlinale probably aren't so great. There's also the formats that they'll accept, and that's partly dictated through either how their juries or judges will be viewing, or programmers will be viewing the films, and also what venue capabilities they have as well. So the Berlinale says here, DCP, which is the general kind of format for screening in the theatre these days, or a digital file. They'll also screen 35mm as well. Some filmmakers will want to screen on that, so they'll have the capabilities and venues to do that. Monsterfest here, which is one of our local horror genre festivals in Melbourne, or in Australia, I should say, will most likely be looking at a digital format to start with for viewing the submissions, and then it might be a DCP depending on where they're screening as well. Here you'll also see in the eligibility guidelines are any dates for submitting films. So at the moment, Monsterfest is open. That's why their dates are listed there, but their early bird deadline has passed. Normally, you'll have a few different deadlines. Film festivals will have different deadlines. So the earlier you get in, the cheaper the fee will be, basically. So it encourages people to filmmakers to put their films in early. So it'll get a little bit more expensive at each deadline. What else have we got here? So they've got submission to the format, whether they need to be premieres. Oh, yes, how long the films need to be. In general, a feature will be 60 minutes plus. Film festivals, though, with short films tend to dictate different maximum lengths depending on how much they can program. So Monsterfest here says films are approximately 15 minutes or less is what they're going for. The film festival I work with is 20 minutes or less. So it really does depend. Most of the time, programmers will say, or at least artistic directors or people putting together the programs, will want to try to fit in as many films as possible. That doesn't necessarily mean they won't screen a 20-minute film. We've done that in the past, absolutely, if the film is spectacular and wonderful and really important. But otherwise, we might try to get some shorter ones to then sort of bulk out the program and screen more films if we can. So it's really important, yeah, to look at those guidelines. Also, because if you notice as well, I've put up just the top here, the Berlinale charges €75 for a short film to enter and €175 for a feature. So it's not, it's not cheap for a big festival. Even Monsterfest, Australian dollars, 45 for a feature and 25 for a short. If you're entering multiple festivals around that price range, then that all adds up. So it's really, yeah, trying to be really strategic about where you go. And that's why it's really important to know if your film is the kind of film that these festivals are looking for. And that's through these guidelines here. So that kind of then leads me to thinking about your festival strategy. So very exciting stuff. I put up a screenshot of a budget template. So exciting. But this is what you know, as filmmakers, this is what you need to kind of be thinking about is, yeah, and this is right from the very beginning too. So you might be in your pre-production for your film, but thinking about, okay, how am I actually going to promote it? And what kind of budget am I going to need to do that? And part of that is how, you know, what kind of budget I'm putting aside for screening submission fees for film festivals. This particular template is taken from Screen Australia, which is our national funding body for film here. And it lists some film festivals that require a little bit of budget. That's what they would like to have in there. But you could do your own version of this. So once you've kind of done a little bit of research, perhaps on what kinds of film festivals you want to get into, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec, you'd then be noting down perhaps submission fees that might be there too that you'll need to budget in. But it's thinking about this right at the very start of the process. And so hopefully if you are going out to find funding for your project, that's a part of the funding that you can get assistance with. So then, which film festivals do you choose? That's, I suppose, the big question. It really depends on what your aims for the film are and what you want to get out of it, I think. So if you're wanting to get your film seen in front of as many audience members as you possibly can, you might kind of think about perhaps a little mix of some of the film festivals I've spoken about. If there's a film festival that requires a premiere, then that might be perhaps one of the more sort of international film festivals. Then you want to start that off in your festival strategy and your festival calendar, because you might want to map out also the timing of all these festivals. So then you're going to be more eligible for a world premiere at one and then a local premiere at another. So yeah, some of the bigger international film festivals, and then perhaps near the tail end of a 12-month sort of run for your film, you could get some of those smaller festivals that might not require a premiere status, but still have a really strong audience focus and a very particular kind of audience too. So if there is a specific demographic of audience that you really want to connect with through your film, then making sure you find those festivals as well. And so that might be, you know, that might be the Australian Indonesian community, or it might be, you know, maybe if it's like a human rights kind of film, that there'll be a specific kind of demographic for that too, that might help push the film on and push its message to the right people. So that might be one kind of aim. Another aim might be that you want to travel with your, well, no, I say travel. You could travel online, but you know, travel with your film to network with it, or to use it to kind of then pitch another project. And so then you'd be wanting to pick film festivals that have options for, you know, a pitching day or networking events, or ways of being able to also meet people and talk about your project. Not all film festivals have these, and so something that's a little bit more industry based might be a preference for you. So it is really thinking about what you hope to achieve through the film and with the film that you've made, particularly because, you know, it's been probably a hard slog to get it done. So, you know, you want to get the most out of that. So thinking strategically that way is really important. And then that'll also help you, budget in the end as well. Okay. So I thought I'd finish off, I'm almost done, with just some tips. So as I said before, I cannot stress enough reading the eligibility criteria and reading the guidelines. And I will tell you a story now. Every year for the Melbourne Women in Film Festival, we only screen films from Australian, Aotearoa, New Zealand and Pacific Islander filmmakers, and they must identify as women or as gender diverse. So we state this very, very clearly in the first couple of paragraphs of our guidelines, and yet without fail, we will get submissions from filmmakers outside of that region, male identified filmmakers who haven't worked with any women on their crew or creative team, and they'll still submit their films to us because they just haven't read the criteria. And we don't, you know, our screening or our submission fees aren't huge, but it adds up. And so it kind of seems like a bit of a waste of money, and then we have to automatically disqualify. the other thing with film festivals too is that they probably won't, they'll have a little disclaimer somewhere saying any submission fee will not be refunded, regardless of the result. So again, it's sort of just throwing away budget that could be targeted towards a festival you have a better chance in, or at least are eligible for. So that's why it's really, really, really important, and why I keep going on about it. So yeah, you're not wasting your time and feeling disappointed in the end. The other thing to have ready, and this is something you'll do regardless anyway, is to put together an electronic press kit or some kind of press kit. They're generally electronic these days, so something that's digital, where you'll have the synopsis of your film, you'll have stills, you'll have information about your creative and cast. There might be distribution information, perhaps. There'll be acknowledgement of your funding, most likely. But all that kind of information that basically you hand over to people to look at, okay, yes, this is what the film was about, this is the background to it. Any other kind of bits of information that might be interesting about it as well. So I know that with some film festivals, they do really like to hear about perhaps an interesting way that the film might have been produced, or a little kind of little story about its background that kind of helps to then create some interest in the promotion of your film through the festival's channels if it gets accepted. So a lot of this stuff is really, really helpful for film festivals to then help promote your film to their audiences. So any production stills that can be used in the festival's online program or print program, for example, as well. Because the whole point of a festival is to get an audience for your film, really. And so whatever you can do to help make that process easier in providing assets and information to the festival, that's really, really helpful for us. And so that's where that EPK comes in, or any other kind of pieces of information. If you're using Film Freeway as a filmmaker, for example, there's all these areas that you can kind of pre-fill in about your director, like your director's details, the synopsis stuff. Some film festivals might also ask for like a cover letter, and that normally will be addressing why your film would work for that particular festival. Not all of them require that, but some do. So there's having a little sort of prep and look, and it also shows that you read the guidelines as well, which is really useful too. So there is that as well. I think that's probably about it. Yes, where to find these festivals. I have mentioned Film Freeway. It is probably the biggest platform at the moment. It doesn't have a huge amount of competition, but there are other platforms out there as well. There used to be another one called Without a Box, but they closed. So this one has taken over. Now, the thing with Film Freeway and a lot of these other platforms that compile film festivals together for filmmakers to submit to is that you do need to be wary of fake film festivals. This is an unfortunate phenomenon because when I suppose whenever a platform like this is started where you can make money out of somebody, there will be unscrupulous people out there who will try to take advantage of that. And I'm not trying to scare anybody by saying this. I'm just saying be wary. Some telltale signs to check to see if a film festival is legit. There will be photos of the festival that would at least also have in the background like the festival artwork. So not just any random Google search photo, but there'll be festival artwork, there'll be filmmakers there, there'll be photos of events. So they will have a live presentation. That's really important. Some festivals will say they're awards only. And some of them might be legitimately awards only, but then I kind of question, as a filmmaker, you kind of want your film to be seen with an audience and not just win awards, maybe. Or that's your strategy, I don't know. But the awards only ones I'd be a little bit questionable about. And reviews. Film Freeway allows filmmakers to put reviews up about festivals. Now, of course, these could be potentially fraudulent as well, but most of the time you're pretty good. Like a filmmaker will write a dodgy review if it's not a good festival. So that's another thing to look at. So you kind of just scroll down to the bottom of the festival and there'll be a whole bunch of reviews around it as well. And that's based on a criteria of, communication and the quality of the festival itself. So those are some ways of kind of looking at that. And of course, there'll be websites. Hopefully the festival has a website and all that sort of stuff too. The other ways you can look at for film festivals are through any kind of screen organisation in your area. Might be government funded potentially or not. That's one way. There's Film Festival Network. So I put a screenshot here of a human rights film network. So they list festivals that are related to human rights issues and screenings. So that's another way to have a look at it. There's an International Women's Film Festival Network that we belong to, for example, as well. And then just doing an internet search is always helpful too. That's all pretty simple, nothing too strenuous. And you can start compiling lists of festivals that you might be interested in through those means as well. And I will say too, I did send a link that can get put in the chat. I don't know if it has been, but there is a little blog that was forwarded to me by a colleague at Deakin, where there are a bunch of film festivals where you don't have to pay a fee. So I'm sure as students, you're like, oh, thank God, there are film festivals that we can probably enter that don't require a fee. That could be quite good to get screened at as well. And also, yeah, and looking to see if there are any film festivals that have student sections, because a lot of the smaller ones and stuff do. We do, for example, we have a tertiary student section that we program each year as well. So there'll be those sorts of festivals there for you also. But I think that's probably about it. So thank you for listening and good luck with your festival journeys.
Thank you so much, Sian, for the very good presentation. I bet a lot of our participants are getting a lot from there. I would like to ask you further questions, but before we go to the discussion, we will go to the presentation as well by Danny Lachevre. So Danny, please start by sharing your experience around the process of pitching and then developing the film concept and how emerging filmmakers can progress their concepts from a very simple idea to an emotionally engaging pitch. The stage is yours, Danny.
Thanks so much, Marissa. Yeah, thanks for that, Sian, too. That presentation was fantastic. It's such a good thing for people to think about their, submitting to these festivals is a really important part of a lot of filmmakers' journeys. And it is really important one, and it involves pitching, of course, getting that idea across in that initial application as well. So definitely a lot to think about there. Well, I'll just do a quick screen share, but yeah, Marissa, feel free if there's anything you want to ask in the middle of this. I don't mind being interrupted whatsoever. So I'll just share that now and see if that comes across. But yeah, if you want to jump in, Marissa, at any point, please feel free to do that. Okay, let me share the screen. Here we go. Hopefully you can all see that okay. Yes, all right. Well, I love talking to filmmakers and students just about pitching. It's a part of our business that we do quite a lot of, and over the last probably 5 years, we've sort of done more and more of this. And I think the reason that pitching and pitching films is such an important part of that journey for filmmakers is it's not really just about getting your project off the ground and getting people, to believe in it and, hand you over money to pay for it. It's also a really important part of actually working out what your story is. So one of the things that I think a lot of filmmakers think is that pitching and marketing is kind of this part of the journeys at the beginning and the end. But it's really something that is there through the whole process, because pitching and marketing your film is really about getting you know, an intimate understanding of what your story is, and watching how people react and getting them to sort of believe in your story. Yeah, when I first started in this industry, a lot of filmmakers really just used to write their, you know, synopsis out on a, you know, in a Word document, and that would go to funding bodies and different, you know, people to get the film off the ground. But increasingly over the last, you know, 5 to 10 years, people really need to sort of get a proof of concept trailer out there to get people to sort of see what their film's going to be about. So we've done quite a lot of those, and done them for everyone from, you know, small, you know, financiers or screening bodies, all the way up to, you know, even Marvel Studios for a few films where, you know, they really wanted to get a sense of what a certain director was going to do with a particular film, like Black Widow. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit more about those pitch reels and, you know, what pitching is. And you know, why it's really an important part for you guys to think about in terms of your journey, and just how log lines in particular relate to that whole pitching process. So yeah, so look, the first thing that you really need to know with your idea is this log line. You know, log lines are one of the very first things, I guess, they teach you in film school. You know, it's the basic 1 or 2 liner that sums up your story. And although that sounds like quite a boring or simple way of getting your idea across, we use log lines right across our whole campaign. You know, right from the beginning, the earliest stages of that pitch, all the way to the end in marketing that film to the public. So the log line is kind of like your DNA in a way of what your idea is. So I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail in a second. So that's the first thing you really need to get your head around when you're pitching. The next thing, as you've probably been told many times, is knowing your audience. And of course, that's one of the most crucial parts of that pitch, is who is your film for? You know, a lot of people think that you're going to be making a film that is for everyone. You know, it's for people under 25, it's for people over 25, it's for men and women equally. Everyone's going to love it. That's quite rare that films are made so broadly. Sometimes they are, but the more that you know exactly who your audience is and who they're, you know, what sort of things they like to watch, that will really help you hone your pitch. And it's one of the most crucial parts that distributors and marketers and broadcasters, everyone will ask, you know, who exactly is this film for? Because they're going to end up having to pitch your film as well. So they really need to know who you're making it for. The next thing is, what is the most unique part of your film? Everyone at the beginning of their journey often thinks they've got the most unique idea and no one's thought of it. Most of the time, there's probably many films that touch on similar subjects or have similar journeys to the film that you're making. So it's really important at the beginning and the pitch part of your journey to work out what all of those other films have done that are similar to yours, but what your film's going to do that's a little bit different to theirs. So that could be everything from character to the story to the location, mixing up different genres, you know, as many different things that your film needs to do. That's really important in getting that across to all of the people you're going to be pitching to, because they want to know, you know, why they should get on board with your project and what's different about it that no one else is going to see before, has seen before rather. The last part is testing the idea. Testing your pitch is so important. A lot of people test it on their partners or maybe their family, and of course those people always tell you it's great and you should do it. But sometimes it's good to pitch it to people that have got no interest in being your friend. So maybe someone who's going to give you some honest feedback. So that's really important. So pitching in, in restaurants and people, in scenarios where you've got people around you that, that you can talk to, and watch their face, watch how, when you get that idea across to them, how do they react? Do they lose interest at certain points? Do they ask questions? Do they not ask questions? All those little tests that you can do before you get to the pitch is really important. So, so the next thing to consider in the pitch is what is the most important part of that pitch that you want to get across. Different films need to do different things in this pitch. So sometimes you really want to get across the director's vision, for example. When we pitched for Kate Shortland for Marvel for Black Widow, this was really crucial. They really wanted to know this art house director, what was she going to bring to essentially a comic book character? How was she going to bring her sensibility to this particular story? Her understanding. Kate has made a lot of films about women and the female journey, and they really wanted to see how is she going to bring that unique idea to the journey of the Black Widow and give that something new. So that was the most important part of that particular pitch. But other pitches could be, involve other things such as the team, the story. Might be that the audience is the most important part of getting that across. But so often, one of the most important things is to get your script read. And that's really why these proof of concept trailers are so important, because everyone has a script, but distributors and financiers and people that will get involved with your film can only read so many scripts. So often a lot of these people are very high piles of many scripts to read, and your proof of concept trailer is like a promise that shows them you've really thought this idea around completely all the way through, and they should really watch this trailer, but also read your script. So it's like a little ad to get them to read your script. So that can be a challenge. So just a quick overview of log lines. So log lines are, like I said before, a little snapshot of what your film is about, like the bare bones of what your story is going to explore. So one particular definition of what a log line or what a story is comes from this great sort of story doctor called Robert McKee, and he's written this book called Story that a lot of students have read. So I really love this particular definition because it really sort of lays out the basics of what a great story does, and you can often slot your story into this, whether it's a documentary or a narrative or whatever your film is. This little line here sort of encapsulates it. So he describes that it is a story is something that is built around an active protagonist. So that is a character or a person who is actually doing something. So they have to be, on a journey. They can't have the journey just in their mind. They have to be doing something, and they struggle against the forces of antagonism. So maybe an easier way of explaining that are all of the challenges that are stopping them from achieving that goal. So that's everything from, actual villains to forces, internal forces in their own character, in their mind. It could be, emotional things that they have to overcome to reach their goal. And once they do, that is an ending of absolute and irreversible change. So all of these, this little sentence here is a great way to sort of, start to build your story around what the goals are and what the challenges are. And that's really a good way to start to get those people excited about your story. So as I said, we use this all the way from the beginning of the earliest days of some of the films that we work on all the way to the end. And it changes all the way through. When we use a logline for the final marketing of the film, sometimes we have to simplify it, whereas at the beginning it might be a little bit broader and encompass more of the goals or more elements of the particular protagonist that we're trying to describe. So the film that I wanted to briefly go through was one of the films that we've that the embassy have featured in this festival called From Sky to Sea. So hopefully some of you saw it the other night, or you'll be watching the next screening coming up with Jamin. I think he's going to be speaking at that Q&A. So this is a great little film that we worked on from the earliest days when the filmmakers came to us with an initial sizzle reel that they had. And they'd received some feedback that it wasn't quite, the story there wasn't quite theatrical enough. So it didn't have enough of the big stakes at play. And it looked a little bit more like a sort of a TV story rather than a theatrical story. So we sat down with them and we worked out what were the things that were in this particular sizzle reel that they had done that wasn't quite working. And then we reshaped it to create a proof of concept. So what I'll show you now is just a glimpse of the initial sizzle reel that the filmmakers did, and then what we did as our proof of concept, where we tweaked some of these elements based on a log line. So I'm not sure if our links to this were put in the chat, but hopefully, Marissa, those links were placed in there for YouTube. So anyone that, if this doesn't play too well through Zoom, and it's a bit choppy, then you can just play it directly from YouTube. But I'll see if this plays.
We have the link here, Danny, in the chat.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think the participant can access that, so don't worry.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, look, I'll see how it plays through here, but I'll probably just play the first 90 seconds of this, and then I'll come back to have a chat. So let's just see how this goes.
Seems that it's not playing on my screen. I wonder if the participants are experiencing the same thing. Nah, bagi para peserta yang sudah hadir di sini, misalnya sulit untuk mengakses yang ada di Zoom ini, di chat barusan kita sudah paste tautannya ya, dari trailer From Sky to Sea yang sedang berusaha untuk dijelaskan oleh Danny. Mungkin bisa mohon bantu klik langsung di situ, tampaknya akan lebih lancar. Thank you. Okay, apparently someone, Nisa Fijriani, said, she said, we cannot see because the shared screen isn't the full screen mode. I'm not sure what that means, but hopefully the technical people understand. Mimin, mungkin bisa dibantu Mimin dari Kedutaan Besar Australia.
Hey, Marissa, I'm not sure how that played. Did that play at all, or was
I
it very
don't think
choppy?
it plays at all. I've asked the participants to open the trailer on YouTube instead, because we've provided the link in the chat box, but I don't know whether they have actually seen. Oh, okay. Okay, Nisa says, but I can see the trailer from the link. That's great. Thank you so much, Nisa. Jadi mohon partisipan yang lain juga melakukan hal yang sama. Sebentar aja klik biar bisa dapat ilustrasi. Oh, kayak gini tuh filmnya. So, Danny, I've just informed the participants to have a look at the trailer through the links. They're doing it right now. Mustafa, Andika, Nisa, some of the participants are doing it right now. So that's good.
Danny, if you want me to play the trailer, share the screen. I can do it also. I can assist from here if you want.
Oh, okay. If that helps, or if everyone's looking at this one already, maybe you can get the next one ready to play. They only need to watch the first 90 seconds to 2 minutes of this, but perhaps the next one you could play directly, if that helps.
Which one? The from Sky to Sea, the concept trailer?
Yeah, it's number 2 on the list that I sent through. It says proof of concept in the title.
Yeah, it seems that.
Okay, it's ready to play. Just let me know when you want me to play.
Okay, I might just have a quick chat just about the first. I might just give everyone another 30 seconds to watch the rest of that, and then I'll quickly talk through that first one. But yeah, sorry about this. Is probably gonna blow our timings out a bit. Is that okay, guys, or should I try to race?
No problem at all, Danny. Go ahead.
Okay, great. All right. Well, hopefully everyone's seen half of that. So that as I mentioned, that initial sizzle reel was created by the filmmakers. Just at the beginning, they'd shot a little bit of footage with Jamin. He's a really interesting guy. He's got an amazing story. But in terms of this initial sizzle reel, I think what the initial feedback was that we're not broadcasters and some of the funding bodies in Australia couldn't quite see that this was going to be a theatrical documentary. The themes and the goals were not quite big enough for Jamin in this sizzle reel. So this is where we sat down, we looked at the story, we looked at that initial sizzle reel, and we reshaped the log line. So this is the log line that we came up here, which was an expectant father. So that was everything in red here, as well, is a challenge. So it's one of those forces that is working against Jamin to achieve his goals. And the blue things are the things that he wants to achieve. So he's an expectant father. So he's got a child on the way. So anyone that's got kids knows that that's certainly a challenge. Quadriplegia, that's a major challenge for him. He wants to be a diver, but he's in a wheelchair with movement only from his chest down, a major challenge. He's in a remote coastal town, so that's important to have in the logline and the pitch. So it's very different if you're in a major city. So being in a remote one is another challenge. So he's from a remote town in Western Australia, and he's struggling. These are all the things that are working against him again. So he's struggling against a director. So you'll see in a moment from the trailer that him and the director, we decided they should actually have a story of their own within the film, where they're struggling against each other to get this story told. And that was one of the things that we suggested was an extra level to bring the theatrical challenges up. He's also got a family of professional scuba divers that he's struggling against because his mum and dad are both divers, and his goal is to measure up to them. So that's a challenge. He wants to be as good as them. And his goal is this childhood dream that he has of filming the great white shark. So obviously the great white shark is a major challenge. That's not something you want come up against in the water when you're a quadriplegic with a baby on the way. So it wasn't just any type of shark. It was the biggest, most dangerous shark that we had to feature. And during this process, he ignites a global debate about disability. You know, what are the rights of someone who has quadriplegia to pursue their own goals and the things that they want to do, even if they are dangerous. So that's kind of how we reshaped the story and the pitch. And all of that was pretty much, well, in the sizzle reel that the filmmakers had constructed, but it wasn't in a way that felt big enough or theatrical enough. So that's where we reshape it, and we tried to make it more dramatic. So if we could quickly play, the proof of concept trailer now, you'll see how this log line came across in the reshaping of that initial reel from the filmmakers. So if we could play that now, that would be fantastic.
Iya.
Thanks, guys.
Jadi selama menunggu, while we're waiting, kalau misalnya partisipan bisa mengklik link kedua yang sudah kita berikan di chat, yang ada tulisannya From Sky to Sea Proof of Concept, silakan diklik sekarang. Dan kita bisa melihat perubahannya ya, dari sizzle reel-nya yang pada saat itu kayaknya ini kurang gereng nih. Kalau misalnya kita mau ada theatrical release, harus dibikin lebih gereng lagi. Dan itu kelihatan di Proof of Concept trailer-nya. Coba kalian lihat ya. I was just asking them to have a look at the proof of concept trailer there, Danny, so that they see the different.
I'm very lucky to have had hundreds of millions of people around the globe recognize my work and view it online. When I got into droning, it was late 2014, and no one really heard of him. Has given me that freedom again. The interest has been overwhelming.
Jamin Hudson.
Goodness, Jamin, these images are incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. So this year marks 10 years since my accident.
And are you happy now?
Yep. Sorry, no, say that again. You know, living with a disability. Sorry, man.
I can't do this.
I'm not interested in being in another patronising documentary about people with disability.
Okay, so tell me about this crazy idea.
I've always wanted to dive with and film great white sharks. Make the documentary about that. That's my idea.
We've got a hell of a lot of work to do. Jamin needs to prepare mentally and physically. There's a lot that can go wrong.
I won't stop.
So worried is an understatement.
Spinal cord injury, it's very energy consuming.
You've got to get out of your comfort zone. Put a camera in my hands, chuck me in the water.
Honestly, you could pay the ultimate price in the end.
You really have to try and make the most of every waking minute.
Shark Week's most dangerous experiment ever.
We'll see what drama unfolds.
Yeah, they're circling each other. They're in perfect formation.
This is gonna put me back where I feel like I rightfully belong.
So check this out. My favorite Shark Week moment of all time.
He's got the whole world watching now. It's become a real political statement.
It's pretty amazing.
What better way to confront your fears than head on?
Wow, the stakes are definitely higher in that one, Danny.
Yeah, look, we really showcased the shark a lot more in that one, and the danger that he was up against. So a lot of those things were talked about in the initial one, but it's really the drama and the high stakes that we needed to get across to everyone that wanted to get behind the film, so they could see, yeah, this is the kind of story that audiences will want to see in the cinema, as distinct from something that is on TV. So that's really what a good pitch should do. It should show how big those stakes are, and that you want to go and see this film to see how, if how he's going to overcome those challenges. So I won't play the final trailer, but if anyone wants to see the final trailer, there's that link there as well. But again, the story changed again in the final story, and I won't, for anyone who hasn't seen the film yet, it will be showing later in the festival. But you know, again, that story changed and the stakes had to change, and we had to deal with those goals and the forces that are working against Jamin. So yeah, so for everyone that has a project that they're working on now, I'd really just have a look at that initial line, have a look at how your story fits into that. And the more that you can look at some of those basics of your pitch and how it fits in, the better you'll be able to consider pitching it to people, the better you'll be able to get that concept across and talk it through and get people excited about it. And you know, a lot of these trailers that we work on for filmmakers, they don't need lots of money necessarily spent at the beginning. It's really all of that footage that we had in that reel there was a lot of it we found from other sources, and we put it all together in a way that looked like it was, you know, from the film, but a lot of it we just borrowed from elsewhere to get the concept across. So it's really just about getting that emotional connection with the people that are going to view it, that, you know, it's too good a story, we can't pass up on this, we want to work with you to get this story made. So yeah, so that's kind of how, well, one small glimpse of one of the projects that we've worked on. We'd love to be able to show some of the other pitch trailers that we've done, but some of those are a little bit more confidential. But yeah, maybe another time. But yeah, but look, the main thing I think to get across is that you want people to get as excited about your project as you are, and that all comes from the story. So yeah, so look, I'll leave that there, and hopefully there'll be a few more questions if there's anything I've forgotten in that pitch overview. So yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Marissa. Thanks for all the help with the technical issues there, guys, and I'll leave those links up for another few hours for people to look at those trailers.
Great, thank you so much, Danny. Yes, definitely. When you have a strong story, that story or that pitch will actually pop up, considering that there are actually so many different stories, and I'm sure so many different people trying to pitch. But what is exactly that will make your story selected out of so many that have been that are proposed by other filmmakers? We already have some questions here for you, Danny, and also for Sian. I actually do have some questions, but I'm just gonna read some of the questions from our participants first. The first one is from Winda Ayu for Sian. She asked, is it okay to submit our film to several festivals at once?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So again, it will be going back to thinking of which sorts of festivals you're wanting to enter into, and whether they do require a premiere status or not, and whether you kind of shoot for those ones at the top of your calendar for your film, and then start filling out the rest. But you can absolutely do more than one festival, or at least apply to more than one festival at a time, for sure. Easy. Okay. I guess it also depends on your budget too, and how many you can actually do. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to just submit to one and then see what happens and then do another one later. Like, just, yeah, that's what your festival strategy is. It's all of those festivals that you've identified that you can submit your film to.
Okay, thank you so much, Sian. Question number 2 is for Danny. This is from Islah Taufik. He asks, if we want to be a film distributor, what's the profit sharing system like in the process of distributing the film between the filmmakers and also the distributors? And what are the opportunities for film distributors in Indonesia? Can you please give tips for beginners? Okay, that's for you, Danny.
Yeah, well, look, I think the opportunity for, I mean, I don't know the Indonesian industry super well, but with such a huge population and the world changing everywhere in terms of how films are distributed, there's got to be a huge opportunity there. In terms of splits with filmmakers, these all vary. It's really quite hard to sort of give you just a set percentage because it changes through every different type of right. So when we work with filmmakers, we have theatrical rights, we have non-theatrical rights, there's VOD, there's TVOD, there's lots of different types of rights, there's airlines, hotels, all sorts of educational. Each one of those varies quite a lot depending on what the distributor will do and depending on the film as well. But look, it can, just for theatrical, it can vary anywhere from, it could vary anywhere from 30 to 40% to the distributor, all the way to 50%. It sort of depends. And then the remainder will go back to the filmmaker. But you also have to remember that cinemas and the distributor split the initial box office profit. So the cinema may take anywhere from, depending on the country, this changes as well, but the cinema can take anywhere from 40 to 65%. So they take a really big piece, but they take a bigger piece in Australia than they do in other countries. So there's often a lot of discussion about that. I'm not too sure in Indonesia, but it would probably be around that same ballpark as well. But it is definitely a partnership.
Right. Thank you, Danny. Question number 3, I guess this is for both of you, Sian and Danny. This is from Anggi. Anggi, he or she is a student from ISI, Yogyakarta. He or she says, one thing that is important for film festivals is it is a place where all filmmakers, programmers, funding opportunities, and people from the film ecosystem gather. How do you see the pandemic affecting everything now? How can we get the atmosphere or the festivity of a festival during the pandemic? And also, how do we pitch our work this time, like virtually? Because it is completely different, isn't it? When you go to film festivals, you can actually meet and say, hello, hi, my name is so-and-so. I have my film. It's a different feeling when you have to pitch your work virtually.
Yeah. So you go first, Danny.
No, you go. All right, thanks, Sian. I was just going to say that, look, this festival, this FSAI festival is just a great example of one of the many things that the pandemic has created, which is, a virtual connection with all of these people that we wouldn't have been able to do before the pandemic. So it's great to be able to connect to everyone like this. And this is the first year that we've done something virtually, and festivals all around the world are doing something similar. So there's a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of great opportunities for filmmakers to get out to even bigger audiences with all of these festivals going out virtually.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's provided some really great opportunities for filmmakers who perhaps wouldn't have been able to travel physically with their films at festivals, that they've got an opportunity to meet people they wouldn't normally be able to get in front of at all. And having said that, though, I have heard stories from producer friends of mine who have particularly in our side of the world, having to go to sort of, pitch sessions at some ungodly hour in the morning. But it does create a lot more opportunity, I think, in that way. I think in terms of film festivals creating an atmosphere or trying to, I think some festivals have really tried to replicate as closely as possible a kind of festival atmosphere. I think in some ways you have to kind of accept that it's not going to be the same kind of atmosphere at all, and instead try to be really creative and try to find ways to get people together virtually. And I think there was a documentary festival that was one of the first ones that did this, CPH Docs over in Denmark, that really try to create sort of opportunities for audiences to engage with the work online in different sorts of ways. So using social media has been a really big thing to do. So having a hashtag that people can use to get involved, or having chat discussions on Facebook or whatever sort of social media platform is available, and trying to encourage people as much as possible to talk about film online in the same way as they might do with the person sitting next to them in a cinema. So there's a few different ways to do it, and it becomes a more kind of global, I think, a global engagement as well.
Thank you so much. And now question number 4, I guess this is a bit of a technical question for Danny, from Amel again. She asked, is logline similar to storyline or dashboard? Thank you.
Dashboard, I'm not sure. I think, isn't that a piece of software? But yeah, it's kind of, I'd say a logline is kind of like a storyline. Yeah, very brief, 1 or 2 sentences only. And just what is your story about at its heart? So it's the most simple way of describing your story. But it's not really simple. So when you write those sentences or a good logline for your film, we sometimes write 20 different versions of that, because as soon as you change those words slightly, you completely change how that character is described, whether they're their background or their other challenges. So yeah, it is similar to a storyline in that way.
Okay. And the final question from our audience, question number 5, I guess this is for both of you. This is from Muslihah from Komunitas di Balik Bingkai. She asks, what is the best strategy and medium that we can use to present our film? Is it through synopsis? Is it through storyline or trailer? Especially when we want to introduce a new idea or concept.
Well, I would definitely say at the beginning of the process, when you're trying to get that idea happening, everyone's got a synopsis, everyone's got a pitch deck. They're quite easy to do. So the difference with the trailers is that you make an emotional connection. I mean, you should still make an emotional connection with your synopsis, but when you watch something, I mean, that's why we create films, in this industry, is because they're just emotional and they're great ways of us connecting to this story. So that's what the trailer does. It's probably the closest representation to what you're ultimately going to make. So I would definitely put a proof of concept or a trailer up the top, and then your deck underneath that. And then, finally, if people like both of those things and you've made a connection, then hopefully they'll read your script.
What about you, Sian?
I agree. I think that, we're dealing with an audiovisual medium, and there's ways of using, those tools and that language to really engage people in your story. Like the music in the trailers that we just watched, for example, that music is so important, and that can really help to guide their audience and get them really involved in what the film is about. So things like that, I think that, that's having the trailer is the way to go.
All right. Well, I actually have 2 more questions, one each for you two, Sian and Danny. The first one is actually from Sian, because we've spoken about filmmakers submitting their films to film festivals, but I also would like to ask, like, the umbrella idea. What are actually the benefits do you get when you submit your film to film festivals? Because we know that out there, not all films actually go to film festivals, only particular ones. So what's the benefits for the filmmakers and the film?
I guess it goes back to a bit of an earlier question around the live atmosphere and that kind of thing. So if it is a festival that is a physical event, then the benefits to the filmmaker is that they can be there and see their audience, like be with their audience, meet their audience that's there watching their films. And, I think, and this has been replicated online too, but film festivals sort of providing a space where it's a completely sort of different thing to watching a film in a kind of standard sort of theatrical release, where you might have a panel discussion that goes with it, or you will have a Q&A session after the screening, so the filmmakers will be there to kind of, that's one way of they can engage with their audiences. And then of course it's also meeting other filmmakers and other people who are part of industry, or maybe distributors, sales agents, all of those sorts of people in industry to help sort of network and progress the career side of what they do, as well as the audience engagement. So film festivals provide all of that sort of stuff to filmmakers that I think is really important, and what benefits them the most.
All right, thank you for that. And for Danny, now we're living in this new reality, right? We're actually living in the middle of the pandemic. So how do we get our pitch at the door of those who can potentially fund our film, especially if we're new filmmakers? Because I'm sure all these funders, they get thousands of emails every day. So should we contact them through email or just go straight to their office and say, hello, I need to meet Miss this or Mr. this, because I have a film idea that he or she will like. So how should we deal with this?
Yeah, well, look, it's always good. It depends on who that who you need to get in front of. If you're trying to pitch to a distributor or a funding, funding bodies are a little bit different. They have a process for doing that. I'm not too sure of the process in Indonesia, but in Australia we've got a there is a process that you apply for. But I think other people that you're trying to get the attention of, that can be a bit tricky. It is always good to have a warm connection. So if you have got a friend, or if you're a first-time filmmaker, one of the best things that you can do is to partner with someone who is more experienced, so an executive producer or someone who has a great contact. And in that way, that's the first step. It means that if someone with that experience who has done, 5 films before you, and you're doing your first film, if you're working with them, they can help to introduce you, and that legitimizes you. So that's the hardest thing. I guess it's getting your foot in the door of someone that you don't have the connection with. So the best way to do that is often through someone that will be able to help you open that door. And whether that's a meeting or an email or sending them the materials after that will depend on that connection. But usually getting something that you can send through first is the first way, whether they're going to take a meeting with you. A lot of people just will not see filmmakers without some sort of connection, but don't let that stop you. Sometimes you just have to persevere. So just be as creative with those connections as you are with the film,
Yeah, thank you so much, Danny. That is very important, our network, right, to be able to get our films or our ideas noticed. Emma, I know that you've joined us again. There's actually just one more question from Petrus Jogja Film Commission. Is it okay if I ask this final question to our speakers today?
Yeah, of course. The
Okay,
great.
Thank you so much. So this is the final question from Petrus Jogja Film Commission. He asked, about pitches, is the project budget also important? As students, we usually don't know what the exact budget is. But I've watched a pitch event and the jury asked about how much the budget is. It didn't make any sense for the students. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I was just replying actually to this one. I was just saying, I was going to say, look, budgets are very difficult for your first film. You don't know how much to ask for. You don't know how much things are going to cost. But I guess budgets are viewed by distributors and financiers as an indicator for the film. So, for example, if you were making a science fiction film with lots of special effects, and then you said, oh, we can do this film very cheaply. We've got friends that do lots of CGI effects, and we can easily do this film for $500,000. But your script makes it sound like this is a $5 million film. That obviously would send alarm bells off for certain distributors, because there's no way you could properly do that, and they don't want to commit to a film if it's not going to be done properly. So it's definitely hard at the beginning, but I would think seriously about that budget and what you need to make it, because that's really the next question that distributors or someone's going to ask. This sounds like a great story, so how much do you need to make it happen? So that conversation will come up. So again, I would just, if you haven't done a budget before, try to network with an experienced producer or production manager that can help you set up that initial budget. It doesn't need to be completely detailed either for every single role, but even just a top level finance plan will at least give some indication of what you need.
Sian, would you like to add?
I guess I was just thinking that there's probably some sort of templates and resources online as well that can help sort of, get that's when I had to put my first budget together for a film festival. Yeah. That's one of the first things I did, was just like film festival budgets, and just tried to do a little bit of research into the sorts of things I needed to think about. So there are heaps of sort of resources online and templates that can kind of go, yeah, here's my, above the line costs and below the line costs. And like Danny said, I don't think you need to go into super detail around it, but just having an idea of what's a part of those budgets is good. So if you can see some examples of it.
Okay, well, thank you very much to our speakers, Dr. Sian Mitchell from Deakin University and also Danny Lachevre from FanforceTV, for sharing and delivering your secrets about film promotion, also film festivals. Terima kasih juga kepada rekan-rekan partisipan yang sudah memberikan pertanyaan. Sepertinya masih banyak sekali ya tentunya yang bisa kita bahas, namun sayang sekali waktunya sudah habis, sudah selesai. Selain para partisipan belajar banyak, saya juga jujur belajar banyak juga dalam sesi film promotion kita hari ini. Memang belajar itu selalu menyenangkan. That's great. Terima kasih untuk kehadiran rekan-rekan semua. Semoga acara ini bisa menginspirasi kalian dalam berkarya di industri film di Indonesia, kemudian bisa juga berkarya di industri film luar negeri. Harapannya begitu, mimpinya begitu. Untuk sementara sesi ini sudah selesai, tapi saya kembalikan dulu ke Emma Board. Emma?
Terima kasih Marissa serta Dr. Sian Mitchell dan Danny Lachevre. Diskusi yang sangat menarik. Terima kasih sekali lagi kepada Institut Seni Indonesia Yogyakarta, Deakin University, dan Fanforce sebagai partner kami dalam program FSAI 2021, khususnya dalam penyelenggaraan film Masterclass promosi film yang baru saja kita laksanakan. Acara Masterclass hari ini akan segera selesai, namun rangkaian acara FSAI 2021 masih akan terus berlanjut sampai dengan 27 Juni. Seperti yang saya sampaikan sebelumnya, ada 6 film Australia dan 2 film Indonesia yang bisa disaksikan. Semua film FSAI tersebut dapat langsung diakses oleh teman-teman yang hadir hari ini secara gratis melalui situs web FSAI, yaitu www.fsai2021.com, dan silakan daftar online dan pilih film yang ingin ditonton. Kami juga masih memiliki 2 rangkaian film Masterclass di hari Rabu dan hari Kamis minggu ini, yaitu film Masterclass untuk pembuatan film dokumenter dan sinematografi drone bersama Jamin Hudson dan Leighton Dibaras dari film Jamin Hudson From Sky to Sea, hari Rabu 23 Juni jam 10 pagi, dan juga film Masterclass menciptakan konten animasi bersama Kristen Suflis, Nadine Bates, dan Ryan Greaves dari Like a Photon, multi-award winning and internationally acclaimed production company dari Australia. Hari Kamis 24 Juni pada jam 10 pagi. Semua acara Masterclass tersebut itu gratis, jadi silakan daftar di fsai2021.com. Baiklah, rekan-rekan, terima kasih banyak. Sampai bertemu fsai2021.com atau di Masterclass berikutnya. Selamat siang semuanya, sampai jumpa ya.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Kedutaan Besar Australia.
Thanks, Marissa. You were great.
Thanks so much. That was fun.
Is there anything you want to say to the animals of Sanctuary City?
Yeah, I'm going back to bed.
Hey guys, are we still on? Hey Emma.
Yeah, still.
Hey Emma. Can you still
Hi, Danny.
hear me?
Yes, I think.
I just wanted to say I felt bad that there were so many questions there that we didn't get to for everyone, and it's hard when you're a student and you know that these guys are trying to get projects up and there's a pandemic and there's so many sort of things that are up in the air. I felt bad that we didn't get through more of their questions.
That's okay. We can collect some of the questions and share them along, and maybe if you guys have time, we can perhaps send some responses out, if that's helpful.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, the other thing that I was going to suggest too is that I don't know if have you joined up to Clubhouse at all? Do you use Clubhouse at all? Are you guys joined up to that? It's a great new platform, but it's kind of like I guess like a voice-only version of social media where you can basically set up a room and you know, large groups can have conversations but without video, and it's just through an app. But anyway, but basically it's been really great for these kind of sessions where people can actually ask questions and get them answered quite quickly, but with, you know, large groups of people. So anyway, I don't know, I was going to suggest that if there are any students that are on that platform, that we could do a follow-up session where maybe they could get some of these questions answered a little bit more quickly. But yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys if you want to organise something like that.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, that's really generous of you. So I'll have a chat to the team and we'll see how we go. Now, I think we've still got a few participants hanging around. So why don't we jump off and I'll send you a separate link.
Okay, thanks, Emma. Speak soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jan. It was great to meet you too.
Yeah, you too, Danny. See ya.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Anything you want to say to the animals of Sanctuary City?
Yeah, I'm going back to bed.